morning to everyone, and thank you very much to Angelos for the introduction, and to Ursula for leading the conference. And thank you to all the APAC team for organising the conference and for inviting me to do a plenary. It's a real honour, and I'm very grateful. And thank you to all of you for attending the session this morning. So basically what I'm going to do today is to talk about the fifth skill of viewing. Now, this fifth skill of viewing has been added to the English language curricula in and provinces of Canada. And I think this is a very, very interesting development, because these three countries, Singapore, Canada, Australia, have excellent education systems. They always rank very high in the PISA rankings, especially for literacy. So these are countries which know something about learning a language. And the fact that they've added this fifth skill is very, very interesting. And many other countries and provinces have also changed the name of the skill of reading to reading stroke viewing. So many provinces, regions have done this. So this is a really interesting development. Now, most of you here will not have heard of the skill of viewing. That's perfectly normal. You won't have heard of it referred to in those terms. But again, at the same time, the vast majority of you will already be carrying out viewing activities. You will be doing viewing, but you don't know it's called viewing, okay? And so you'll be doing this online, and you'll be doing this face-to-face already. So what I'm going to do in session, I'm going to explore the sort of theoretical background, very briefly, the theoretical background to viewing. Then we're going to explore, we'll have a look at a definition of viewing, but to start with, I'm not going to give you a definition. I'd like you to sort of work it out for yourself, if you may. And we're going to, then we'll look at why viewing is important. We're going to look at where viewing is being developed already. And we're going to look at some tried and tested viewing strategies which have been used for many years and stood the test of time. And a number of these strategies, you will already be using these frameworks and strategies already. Okay. Now, so to start with, what I'm going to do to start with, we're actually going to do some viewing to start with, although I'm not going to give you a definition yet. I'm going to give you, we're going to watch a video, which is one example of viewing, but there are many different types of viewing. It's not just viewing videos. In fact, it's a short film. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a short film which my friend and colleague Anna Witcher and I created 6 years ago. And it's related in some way to the skill of viewing. Now, as you watch, it's less than 2 minutes long, so it's very short. As you're viewing this, what I'd like you to do is just to think about these two questions. What do you think the message of the video is? And what do you think of the fifth skill of viewing might be after watching this video? Okay, so I'm just going to play it now. As I said, it's less than 2 minutes, so just watch this, think about what the message is and what viewing might be after having watched the video.
A visual
Okay, so perhaps if you've sort of reflected on that, what the message might be, what viewing might be, you might like to add that into the chat. When we talk about the message, when we watch a video, very often we can, or a video or a short film messages. We're not very certain about what it might be. As I actually created this with Anna Witcher, I actually know what the message is as one of the people behind it. So essentially, it's the omnipresence of images, far from producing greater visual literacy amongst young people, may be leading to a greater passivity towards images. The research would seem to indicate that rather than young people analyzing, interpreting images in depth, there's a very superficial approach to images. And there's greater passivity, and we need to help young people to reflect on and analyze what they are seeing. Anna wrote the narrations, quoting Anna here. So as Anna says, images are everywhere, they're an intimate part of the world, but with the saturation of images, even the bombardment of images, asking the question, are they losing their impact? Do we really understand what they mean? And that this tendency towards passivity, that we need to be more discerning, we need to be more selective, and we need to be more collaborative in our approach to using images in the classroom. And then this necessity, as Anne writes here, to slow down, to stop and reflect on what we're seeing, why it's there, how it affects us emotionally, and why. So it's about visual, certainly it's about visual literacy, but it's also about critical thinking as well. So the viewing is essentially to do with multimodality and visual literacy. And multimodality and visual literacy are not normally dealt with in depth on TESOL or ESL or ELT training courses, pre-service or in-service. When Anna and I made the film, we were inspired by a number of academics and a number of writers. One of the writers was Stephen Apcon, who's a film director and writer and educator in the United States, and particularly his book, The Age of the Image, which I'd recommend to all of you. And this is in 2013. So Apcon talked about the ascendance of the moving image as the primary mode of communication around the world. So he's referring to mode here. The mode is a meaning-making system. And I would say this is undeniably true, that the image is becoming the primary mode of communication around the world. Apcon is very much echoing what Gunter Kress said, the great Gunter Kress, in his seminal work, Literacy in the New Media Age, 10 years earlier, when he talked about the former constellation of book and the mode of writing is giving way to the new constellation of medium of screen and the mode of image. So the meaning-making system of image is becoming the primary mode of communication. So I think this is undeniably true. How does this relate this relates clearly to visual literacy? And again, visual literacy is something which is not normally dealt with in ELT training courses, pre-service courses or in-service courses. And we have a definition here. There are many definitions of visual literacy. This is quite a contemporary one, which I like. So it says visual literacy refers to a group of largely acquired skills. I think this is fundamental, that these skills acquired, they're not innate. So we learn these skills, the ability to understand, to read images, and to use images, to write images, as well as to think and learn in terms of images. As I mentioned before, that visual literacy is not generally dealt with much in TESOL conferences or in TESOL courses. And my friend and colleague Sylvia Karastathi has written about this in an excellent article called Visual Literacy in Language Curriculum, which I'd recommend to all of you. And you can download and read this document for this article for free. as Sylvia says, visual literacy is largely ignored in TESOL, and it's often subsumed under the focus on literacies. We have a huge focus on digital literacies, and visual literacy is a very, very small part of this. But there seems to be a paradox, because the digital tools produce mainly visual media. So this, as Sylvia says here, this is an overall misinterpretation of its changing role in the ELT field, and that visual literacy is becoming increasingly important. And as Sylvia very eloquently points out here, that if contemporary communication is becoming primarily a multimodal one, we need to rethink the construct of communicative competence. What it means to be able to communicate competently in the 21st century, where communication is becoming increasingly multimodal in nature, we need to rethink this construct of communicative competence. And as Sylvia points out here, there's a definite need for visual literacy training and multimodality training on pre-service courses and in-service courses. And this type of training would empower teachers to have better communication and collaboration with their students in a multimodal world. An expert in another Greek, Sylvia Karastati is a Greek academic, another Greek academic, Sophia Mavridi, who's based in the UK at Leicester University. She's an expert in digital pedagogy, and Sophia talks about, she's saying, as the offline and online worlds increasingly intersect into one multimodal world. I think this is beautiful what she's saying here, and very, very relevant, that we need new types of literacies, and visual literacies would be one of these types of literacies. So it's undeniable that visual literacy and multimodality are increasingly important in language education, but there's quite a lot of resistance to visual literacy and multimodality training. And some people point out that perhaps people like Sophia, who's a digital pedagogy expert, she has a vested interest, that Sylvia Karastati, who has a PhD in visual communication from Cambridge University, has a vested interest. I would say they don't have a vested interest, that they're essentially just saying what's happening. Somebody who cannot be accused of having a vested interest in promoting visual literacy and multimodality is David Crystal, and David Crystal is saying exactly the same as Sylvia, is saying exactly the same as Sophia, just from last year. And as David Crystal says here, it's important to get students used to a multimodal world. So he's recognizing, somebody like David Crystal is recognizing that communication is increasingly multimodal in nature. But as Crystal points out here, and I think this is very important, it's not a world where the image is always replacing language, but one where the printed text and images work together to form a communicative act. And I think that's beautiful, that where printed texts and images work together to form a communicative act. So if you think about, for example, a meme is an example of a multiple text. We have the image and the printed text, and they're working together to form a multimodal text. So I think that's very, very important. Now, if we were to go, if communication is increasingly multimodal in nature, which I would say is undeniably true, I think this would be reflected in the Common European Framework of reference. Would you agree with that? That I don't know if you'd like to say in the chat. Do you think the Common European Framework would refer to visual literacy, multimodality? How do you imagine that? Do you think there's any mention of visual literacy or multimodality in the Common European Framework? To answer that question, I would say an extremely qualified yes. In 2018, in the revised descriptors, we have audio-visual reception. Now, audio-visual reception for me is hugely problematic. Any problems that you can see with audio-visual reception? Is there anything there that for you, there's something there which isn't quite right, or why might this term be problematic? Reception, only reception. Okay, so only reception. This seems passive, doesn't it? It seems passive. Audio visual, is this a term that you use very much? Audio visual, does it sound very contemporary? It doesn't sound contemporary at all. We have the use of audio visual. The use of audio visual peaked in the term peaked in its usage in 1950, and you can see from going down to 2020, it's dropped hugely. So multimodality would be much more useful. Then we have the descriptors. So we're saying what audio visual reception is. Watching TV and film includes live and recorded video material. Okay, higher levels film, but why only at higher levels? You can use film at much lower levels, surely. And you are using film and video with your students, I'm sure, at much lower levels. And some of the key concepts are following: change of topic, identifying main points, fair enough, identifying detailed nuances, implied meanings, level C, only level C, surely at lower level students are doing this already, delivery from slow, clear, standard usage to the ability to handle slang and idiomatic usage. Okay, fair enough. When we actually look at the descriptors, and I've just chosen level C here, it gets hugely problematic. Level C2, there's no descriptors available. Why are there no descriptors available? There's descriptors at level C, at C2 available for listening, for reading, but not for audiovisual reception. Then C1, I've done a screenshot here just to prove that I'm not invented this. So can follow film employing a considerable amount of slang, idiomatic usage. I would say students at lower levels with our students are watching a lot of television series. In Catalonia, the students are watching streamed television series. They're watching a lot of films. The level of vision has gone up a lot in the last 10 years, I would say, but can understand in details the argument presented in demanding television broadcasts. Television broadcasts is not a contemporary term. Some of you, I imagine, have never heard this expression before. Current affairs programs is problematic. It's not a very contemporary term. Interviews, discussion programs, chat shows, but then can understand nuances, implied meaning in most films and television series. I haven't got a problem with, but plays. This would indicate that students are learning English through watching Harold Pinter plays or Samuel Beckett plays, which is clearly not the case. There's no reference here to streamed television or YouTube. So it seems to be very out of date and not really reflecting how our students are learning English. And this was when the final new descriptors came out last year in 2020. We have, this is the new cover. It's a bit nicer than the old one. At least there's a bit of color there. We've gone back, instead of audiovisual reception, to audiovisual comprehension. So they've got rid of the reception, gone back to comprehension, but the descriptors are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. So it's not very useful, and I think they've missed a huge opportunity here. And when we look at reception activities and strategies, we have the reception activities for oral comprehension. We have 5 different categories here. For reading, we have 6 different categories. Audiovisual comprehension, we have watching TV, film, and video, full stop, and nothing else. So I think it's like it's an afterthought. So I was despairing the news descriptors, and I really do think that the Common European Framework of Reference, the authors have missed a huge opportunity to talk about visual literacy and multimodality and the types of texts, that multimodal texts that our students are using to learn English. But last year I discovered a new framework, which is a wonderful framework, which I recommend to all of you, the Common Framework of Reference for Intercultural Digital Literacies. And I'll give you a link to that, which is a wonderful framework. Now, this framework, which I imagine most of you will, the vast majority will not have heard of this framework, but you should have heard of this framework, is no fault of your own. It just hasn't been, communicated very, very well. This is an integration to an expansion of the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. So you should have heard about this. This should have been communicated better. The rationale behind the rationale behind this framework, which is a wonderful framework, is really groundbreaking in my opinion. So it says the rationale behind the framework is that everyday communication and interaction in online and digital environments involves a complex and intertwined set of abilities, given that artifacts, texts, and interaction involve more than language. Now, this is fundamental. It's a recognition that communication in the 21st century involves more than printed language or spoken language, as they always combine a range of auditory and visual meaning-making resources. Meaning-making resources means modes. So this is really groundbreaking, this recognition here. We have wonderful descriptors here, can-do statements for viewing a video. So this is really what viewing is, although it's not defined here. And then we have the different levels here. So I would recommend looking this in more detail, and I will give you a link to this, and I will also be sending to APAC the slides here. I know there's a lot of information. I will send the slides, and I will send the frameworks I'm referring to as well here. Now, so I still haven't defined viewing, but I imagine most of you will know what viewing is from what we've examined so far this morning. So we have to go to the Saskatchewan government. Saskatchewan is a province of Canada, and this is the definition of viewing, which I think is a beautiful definition. Viewing is an active process of attending to and comprehending visual. Okay, so it's an active process. This is fundamental. It's not passive. Visual media, and we've got some examples: television, advertising, films, symbols, photographs, videos, sculptures. You may think of some other types of visual media, for example, memes, infographics, TikTok videos, all of these things here. So this is a wonderful definition. And then we have in the same viewing and representing document, which is a wonderful document, again, which I will send you a link to. We have the questions of what an effective viewer asks themselves. So the effective viewer asks these questions, which are typical sort of media literacy questions, which come from as far back as the 1970s. What is the text representing? How is the text constructed? What's the purpose of the text? To whom is the text directed? Whom does the text exclude? And also a personal reaction to the text. What's my reaction to the text? And notice that they're referring to images as text. This is very important. What causes this reaction? What personal connections and associations can I make with this text? So this is activating the student's schemata there. And why viewing is important. Viewing representing document of the Saskatchewan Ministry of Education. That viewing helps students develop the knowledge and skills to evaluate visual text and multimodal texts that use visuals. I would perhaps, my only caveat here would be to change multimedia to multimodal. So if the vast majority of the texts our students are encountering are visual texts and multimodal text, they need to have the skills to analyze and evaluate these texts, surely. And also, viewing helps students acquire information and appreciate ideas and experiences visually conveyed by others. People are communicating their experiences visually more and more. Communication is being communicated visually more and more. So students need the ability to be able to analyze these texts, to understand these texts. So where and how is viewing already being developed? In terms of training, as far as I know, the only institution in the world where viewing is being developed, where new teachers are being trained in the 5th and 6th skill. There's a 6th skill of visually representing, which we haven't got time to look at today, but this has been added to the curricula in Canada and Singapore and Australia. The School for International Training in the United States, one of the most prestigious TESOL teacher training institutions in the world, are now training their new teacher skills: reading, writing, listening, speaking, but also viewing and visually representing. Other institutions throughout the world will be doing this very shortly. Now, if we look, we're going to look, the thing, I think most of us would agree that multimodality and visual literacy are important, and they should be incorporated into our class practice, but they can be difficult to systematize, as Ben Goldstein says here. And Ben Goldstein is one of the people who has done fantastic work in visual literacy and multimodality, and one of the people who've inspired the work that I have done. It can be difficult to systematize, so therefore we need frameworks which help us to systematize visual literacy and multimodality. And what we're going to do, we're going to look viewing frameworks, tested frameworks which have stood the test of time and used many institutions throughout, and a number of these you will be using, or you will have seen, you are using, or your course books are using these frameworks. So the first framework we're going to look at is a media literacy framework, and we're going to look at a framework which comes from the Center for Media Literacy, which was founded by Elizabeth Tolman in the 1980s. And Elizabeth Tolman was a Roman Catholic nun who was a leading pioneer in media literacy, and she was inspired by the work of Paulo Freire and critical pedagogy. And this framework is one of the most solid viewing frameworks that I know of. We have the 5 core concepts. All media messages are constructed. And then we have the question, who created this message? So every time we have an image, we have a video, we have a meme, we have a TikTok video, we can ask this question, who created this message? The second concept is media messages are constructed using a creative language with its own rules. So what creative techniques are used to attract my attention? So it may be the use of color, it may be the use of a slogan, it may be the use of a moving image, of a sound effect. Different people experience the same media messages differently. So how might different people understand this message differently than me? This is an excellent question for not just for fostering media literacy and visual literacy, but also for fostering empathy. The fourth concept is media have embedded values and points of view. So what values, lifestyles, and points of views are represented, and equally important, what values, styles, and points of views are omitted in the image or the meme or in the film or the video or the painting or the photograph. And most media messages are organized to gain power or profit or power or influence. So why is the message being sent? So it's an incredibly simple but incredibly powerful framework which has been used in thousands of institutions for decades and is incredibly effective. So we could use this framework with an image like this, okay? This image here. Who created this image? Okay, and we could look in and find out who created this image. What creative techniques are used to grab my attention? Well, clearly the slogan breaking point in red is used, the color is used to grab your attention. The size of the font, the image is used to grab your attention as well. So we could use this with all images, with all videos. So it's a very powerful framework. We're going to look at film literacy here, and we're going to look at with feature-length films, film clubs, and we're going to look at film clubs. Now, a film club, we're going to look at film clubs which have been set up by an organization in the UK, Into Film, which is a charity which receives lottery money. And basically, this is what they do. Okay, I'm going to show you a trailer, a 1-minute trailer, and this is basically what Into Film clubs do. So rather than me explaining it, you can watch this short trailer and you'll have a much better idea of what it is. As you watch the trailer, what I would like you to do, please, is just to think if you would like the type of film club which is described here in your school, in your institution, in your university. So as you're watching it, basically just to think, do you think film clubs are a good idea? Would you like this in your school or institution? You might like to put that in the chat, whether you would like it or not, okay?
Setting up a free Into Film club is quick and easy to do. You'll get instant access to thousands of carefully chosen films, educational resources, a range of materials, competitions, and filmmaking opportunities for young people, as well as exclusive access to events and screenings across the UK. All this is paired with your very own one-to-one support from the Interfilm team.
I would thoroughly recommend Interfilm to any school who wants to improve their attainment in literacy. By watching and engaging with film, Interfilm clubs help children improve their critical thinking, their literacy and their problem-solving skills.
When I am finished school, I'm so excited because I want to get to film club. I enjoy discussing the film with my friend because we all have different opinions.
A lot of people who come here are either socially isolated, or you can have other kids with anxiety.
It's amazing that everyone in the room is connecting through the magic of film.
An Interfilm club is easy to set up. It's fun, it's flexible, it enhances the curriculum, and it's completely free. Start your free Interfilm club today.
Okay, so what do you think that's a good thing? Do you think it's a good strategy, an educational strategy? How do you feel about that? Would you like one in your school? Yeah, looking at the chat, I can see people saying absolutely excellent. Yes, definitely. Yeah. So the vast majority, when I do this presentation and I talk about film club, nearly every teacher says they think, wow, that's a great thing to do. But in my opinion, is one of the best viewing strategies and frameworks which exist. If I tell you about film clubs is the largest extracurricular activity in the UK. Over half of the state schools in the UK have a film club there. I think it's something like 700,000 children a week, and they're watching films from around the world. They're not watching Hollywood blockbusters. They're watching films in lots and lots of different languages, really interesting narratives, top quality narratives. And what's happening is that film club is improving not just academic performance, critical thinking, it's also improving social engagement, self-confidence, and it's giving a lot of students from economically deprived backgrounds access to high quality narratives, and it's improving their print literacy because they're learning how to analyze a film text. They're using the same skills which are transferable skills, and it's improving their reading and writing. So it's wonderful. Now, tragically, this was going to be, this is as I mentioned, it's a UK initiative, but the European Commission wanted to have this as a European Union wide initiative because of the success it was having in the UK. Tragically, because of Brexit, this is not going to happen. I don't really want to get into politics, but this is a tragedy because it would be so wonderful. However,
setting up a free
you still have access to all of the film resources. They're completely free. So you can go to the Interfilm Club website and you can download hundreds and hundreds of wonderful film guides, pedagogically sound, with excellent viewing questions, and the approach to viewing is absolutely completely solid, very, very pedagogically sound. You go there, you download the film guide. So for example, have film guide to the film Selma. We have a short synopsis. We have previewing questions to activate students' schemata. What you know about Martin Luther King? Absolutely excellent question for activating students' schemata. What did he campaign for? What methods did he use? Can you quote anything? So we always have viewing questions were excellent. Then we have post-viewing questions, which are again really pedagogically sound. Then the students write about the film as well, and there are other activities as well. So you can just download these activities as well. So you could use it as a sort of informal club. But I must say, it's one of the best viewing strategies and frameworks I know. But you can still use it, even though you can't implement a film club in your school with all of the free resources. You can download all of the free resources here. And Biban Kidron, who's the founder of Film Club, she talks about how They knew that film club would engage the students with the narratives of the films that the students were watching, but that the students have gained in their behavior has improved, their self-confidence has improved, their academic performance has improved. So there's many advantages of this type of students watching a wide variety of films. And this is an example of what is called extensive viewing. Now, extensive viewing, most of you will have heard of extensive reading. So extensive reading is in very basic terms is students reading as much as possible for pleasure at a level slightly lower than their language level. And this has had huge success in Japan, and there are many benefits of extensive reading. That obviously students improve their reading, but they improve their vocabulary acquisition, they improve their listening, they improve their speaking and overall language competence. Extensive viewing is doing the same with feature-length films and television series. So in many ways, this is what our students are doing when they're watching streamed television series and films. The only problem that we have with extensive viewing is that extensive viewing doesn't enjoy the huge database of graded and leveled material which extensive reading enjoys. There are thousands and thousands of readers, as you know, but it's much more expensive and much more complicated than to grade. To grade a novel is very easy and very cheap. To grade a television series or a film is prohibitively expensive and complex. So we have to make extensive, also we have to simplify the text in some way. I'm just going to go through very quickly a framework which I'm working on. Frameworks have been tried and tested. The ones I'm referring to and will refer to. This one is one I'm working on and using at the moment, but it's using the same principles of extensive reading and applying it to films and television series. So there's no reason why this won't work with television series and film. So very briefly, I'm just going to go through this with you now. So it's a 7-stage process, a 7-stage framework. So first of all, there's a focus on activating the students' background knowledge and generating predictions. So we have previewing questions, previewing discussion about the film. So for example, if we have a film about New York, we would ask the students, what do you know about New York? What types of images do you think you will see in a film about New York? If it's a film about the civil rights movement, we may ask students, what do you know about the civil rights movement in the United States? Do you know about Black Lives Matter? So we're activating the students' schemata there. We're giving them a reason to watch the film as well. Then the next stage is giving the students a synopsis of the film. When students have a synopsis of the film, they understand the narrative. This takes off the pressure of them understanding the narrative when they watch the film, and this reduces the cognitive load. I'm sorry, just one thing with this. I will send you this. I will send to APAC this complete framework with all the different parts there. The third stage is a stage of a glossary, because there's so much language and it can be so complex in a film or video, a film or television series, that students need a glossary. So with a feature-length film, a glossary of between 100 and 200 keywords and expressions which students read before watching. The fourth stage is actually watching the film, the first viewing, but it's the use of subtitles to grade the text. So, and there's a lot of research being done at the University of Barcelona, fantastic work by the team that Carmen Munoz is running into the use of captions and subtitles in language learning. And at lower levels, at A1, A2, and even B1, the subtitles in L1, so in Catalan or Spanish, but the subtitles for higher levels in the L2 in English at B1, B2 and C1. So the use of subtitles is fundamental. And the first viewing is for pleasure. And then there's a second viewing where the students read the glossary again, and this time they're noticing the use of the vocabulary more. And then the sixth stage is a post-viewing stage, which is a focus on analyzing the film. And then we analyze the film, we analyze the character, the story, the sound, etc. And then the final part is a personal, getting a personal student in the form of multimodal text. So the students respond to it in a personal way. So we have a multimodal review of the film. So the students write about the film, about the characters, about the story, but they also include images, they include clips from the video, a multimodal analysis of a scene where they're using screenshots of the scene, clips from the scene, an oral video summary as well. So we're getting a multimodal response there. And there we have the framework here. So very much here, it's using the same principles of extensive reading, which has been hugely successful, but applying them to films and television series. This brings us to narrow viewing. So extensive viewing is reading as much as possible. Reading is reading as much as possible for pleasure. Narrow reading is reading the same type of book or the same series of books. So for example, if the students like reading thrillers, they read thrillers because it's the same type of language, the same vocabulary, the same similar characters. Narrow viewing is students watching the same type of genre of film. So if they like fantasy, they watch fantasy. If they watch all of the Harry films. The television series, they watch all of the seasons of How I Met Your Mother or Breaking Bad. This makes it much more accessible because it's the same characters every week. It's the same pronunciation. It's very similar expressions. So this is aiding comprehension. Okay, just for the last 5 minutes, we're just going to look at viewing paintings and photos and some frameworks that we have here. Now, we're going to look at visible thinking routines. Now, many of you will already know visible thinking routines because they're being used in many course books, particularly for primary, but also for secondary. And these visible thinking routines comes from visible thinking, which is part of Project Zero, which was founded at Harvard University by Nelson Goodman in 1967. And the idea that Project Zero was founded to enhance learning and thinking in the arts. So we're going to look at one routine, which many of you would be familiar with, See, Think, Wonder. We're going to look at this routine here, where these routines, there are a number of routines which are easy to remember and easy to apply, which become part of the fabric of classroom practice. So we have the question, what do you see? What do you think about that? How does it make you feel? Okay, so we're just going to watch just for 1 minute, a teacher in the United States with a group of secondary school children doing a See, Think, Wonder. As you're watching, just notice how the teacher and use these three stems here.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be doing a See, Think, Wonder, which is a visual thinking routine. And in order to do this, what I'm going to ask you to do is to evaluate some photographs that I'm going to show you as they introduce our next chapter. Interesting. Kelly, what do you see?
I see two men pushed up against a wall or a fence, and I think that they're trying to move something or trying to look for something. And I wonder what it is that they're moving or what they're trying to look for.
What makes you think they're trying to move something?
Because the guy in the gray shirt, he's pushed up against it like he's trying to push it or something.
This gentleman right here?
Yeah.
So it looks like he's actually physically doing some labor.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I see two people looking through.
And what do you think about it?
I think they are not very wealthy because of what they're wearing.
I'm glad you added the because that's an important part of this, is to have evidence of it. So based on what you see they're wearing, you don't think that these are very wealthy people. Mm-hmm. Is there something that you're wondering about?
I wonder if they want to be on the other side of that.
Maybe that's what they're looking through.
Yeah.
You wonder what country they're from. You're assuming they're not from the United States.
the teacher is is a very skilled practitioner with this routine, and the students are very comfortable with it and they do it very well. So the idea behind this routine is that it encourages students to make careful observations, thoughtful interpretation. It stimulates curiosity as well. Ideally, the students would be using the 3 stems together. I see people getting out of a boat. I'd be refugees because they look very tired and thirsty. I wonder what's going to happen to them now. So they would use it like that. But in our case, as teachers of English as a second language or a third language, as foreign language, we would need to use each stem at a time, certainly initially, and scaffold each response with a follow-up question. So we could do this. You can do this see, think, wonder with any photo, with any painting. What do you see? What do you think about it? What does it make you wonder? We could use it with this photo here. For example, this photo, we could use it with this photo here. I can see a group of people on a beach. I think it might be the Mediterranean, and explain why. I wonder what's going to happen to these people here. And just for the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to look very quickly at visual thinking strategies, which many of you at primary will be using this strategy or be aware of this strategy. And this was developed by Philip Yenawine, who is a museum educator. He was the director of education at the MoMA Museum in Manhattan, and Abigail Huzan, who is was a cognitive psychologist. And we're just going to look for 1 minute, a secondary school teacher, explaining this routine. And as you're watching, just think if this is a routine that you could use.
Aperture.
VTS stands for visual thinking strategies, and an educational technique for people to look at photographs. And it was invented by Philip Yenawine. We use sort of a modified version of it. The idea is basically you have students look at an artwork and you ask them, what do you see in this picture? What's going on in this picture? And then they make an observation, and then you ask them to back it up with visual evidence. So they can say really anything, any opinion that they have about the work, but they need to be able to back it up with something that they see. To pull from Abigail Huzan and Philip Yenawine's basic VTS at a glance, the steps that they describe are projecting the first image and giving the students a minute to just take it in. Then ask questions after they've examined it. Ask what's going on in this picture. Then ask what do you see that makes you say that, and what more can you find? And you can feel free to modify these questions into language that feels comfortable for you. Then when the students comment, the way you respond is to just listen carefully, point to what they saw in the image, paraphrase their comment. You can change the wording, you can add in vocabulary at this time, but not the meaning. Accept each comment neutrally, and then link answers that are related and link them to prior knowledge.
Essentially, it's those 3 questions. We're going to look, I'm just finished by showing an example of this with the primary school children in the United States, and how the teacher and the students use this strategy. It's only 1 minute.
My loves, take a minute, look at this image.
Okay, so you notice here, teacher gives students 1 minute to look in silence at the image. Okay, so this is helping the students to analyze more in depth rather than having a superficial analysis of the image. And the students will start, the teacher will ask a question in a moment.
What's going on in this picture? Ava.
I see a bird lady.
What do you see that makes you say this is a bird lady?
Because she has feathers all over her face and her clothes, or clothes, and her neck.
Okay, so Ava's calling this the bird lady because she's noticing that there's feathers all over her face and her neck and what seems to be all over her clothes. What more can we find? Rakim.
I think this is a lady actually dressed up in a costume, because I see she has human feet and human hands.
Okay, so Rakim thinks this is a lady dressed up in a costume because you're noticing that she still has human hands and human feet. What more
Okay,
can
so
we
as
find,
you say,
Navaya?
again, a very skilled practitioner, and the students are very comfortable. So these rules and strategies have to be used many times before students become proficient with them. So essentially, the VTS approach, it finds meaning in imagery, it develops visual literacy through learning and the arts, but it also fosters thinking and communication skills. So we have the first question: what's going on in this painting? The student offers his or her answers. Then the teacher asks the follow-up question: what do you see that makes you say that? This is called in the magic question. What do you see that makes you say that? So the students infer, but they have to justify their infer, and then they justify their inference, and the teacher asks, what else can we find? So, and then this is just a summary of this strategy here. So the silent minute of reflection, what's going on. The teacher doesn't criticize or praise. The teacher may paraphrase, and then then we have the students have to, what makes you see that? Sorry, what do you see that makes you say that? The students have to offer evidence for their inference. This is vitally important. Then what more can we see? This strategy is incredibly powerful and being used in institutions throughout the world. And we could use it with an image like this here. This strategy has become so popular that it's been used for a number of years by the New York Times. Every Monday, they publish a photo and they use this strategy, what's going on in this picture, and students from around the world comment on this, and it's monitored as well. So this was a photo this was a photo from last Monday, and this is one from last year. Okay, so just to finish here, what I'd just like to say is just some concluding thoughts, that viewing helps students to slow down, reflect, think about their images that they're seeing. It helps students develop the skills to analyze and evaluate visual text and multimodal text that use visuals. And viewing helps students acquire information, appreciate ideas and experiences visually conveyed by others. Viewing can be most effectively developed and systematized by using these types of tried and tested frameworks that we've looked at. Viewing and visually representing the sixth skill would undoubtedly become part of the English language curricula in many countries in the near future. In Catalonia, it will be very, very soon. And there's a need for specific multimodality and visual literacy training on pre-service and in-service courses. I hope that there's something there that has been of use to you. As I say, I will send all of the routines and strategies and frameworks to APAC. I will send the slides as well. So thank you very much. I hope you've got something from the session. And thank you again to APAC for inviting me to speak here. It's been a pleasure.